All right, so I'd like to welcome those of you that have attended today. We certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to join our meeting here at Tri-State SHRM. I'm J.W. Bramlett, the current president of Tri-State SHRM Texarkana, and we are getting closer to having our in-person meetings. Our next in-person meeting will be in September, and that will be a hybrid version where we'll also still have available for you to attend virtually or in person, whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever's most convenient. And our meetings are held at Texarkana College's campus. And so that in-person meeting will also be dependent upon their protocols and procedures up to that point. So as of right now, they're still going to allow outside organizations like ourselves to be on campus in September, but that it could be subject to change. And we'll just kind of address that if it comes up, and maybe look for alternative places if we have to. But we definitely want to get back to being in person, and it's still providing a virtual environment for those that have trouble traveling to meetings during the lunch hour or just can't attend for whatever reason. So that's something to look forward to. We are going to try and vote on our bylaws today if we have a quorum, which right now we only have 10 people present that are active members, and we need 30% of our active membership. And the last I checked today, we have 60 active members. We have a few people that are pending renewals, but they're actually past due, so they're not technically active members at this point. And so we would need 18 people present, 18 active members present to have a quorum to vote on those bylaws. So if we end up getting that number by the end of the meeting today, then we will conduct that vote towards the end. If not, then we'll try to call another special meeting sometime over the course of the next month and try to do it that way. But we'll keep trying to get that quorum put in place until we get it and we can vote. And so that way we can move on and put our new bylaws into effect once SHRM National votes on them as well, but they first have to be voted on by us. So as far as upcoming events, we obviously have a meeting coming up in August, and let me look real quick and see if I've got that flyer prepared yet. I don't believe I have that flyer prepared yet, but I am working on it. And so that should be coming out within the next couple of days. So that way you can sign up for the August meeting. And that meeting will take place on, let me check real quick, on August 10th. So that meeting will be August 10th from 12 to 1. And that one will be our last virtual only meeting, assuming that everything stays as it is with Texarkana College. Today, I do have one announcement, then we'll introduce our speaker, Kevin Cartwright, today. And that is, we had a donation to purchase a meeting owl. And the meeting owl is the device we're going to use so we can have our hybrid meetings to where they're both virtual and in person. And we had a donation of $250 from Steve Collier and his consulting company. And Steve, if you want to just take a moment, you can let everybody know what your company does. I mean, I know, but everybody else may not know. So if you want to kind of let us all know what your consulting company does now. And
sure. Yeah. Basically, kind of all things HR generalist related. So if any of your organizations need counsel or advice, employee relations is sort of my sweet spot, but everything that relates to that, policies, employee handbooks, those kinds of things. If you need help, don't hesitate to call. I'll be happy to help any way that I can. And yeah, I'm excited to help kind of jumpstart the funding for this OWL. That is the device that will allow us to handle virtual meetings once we get back together live. And if any of you or your companies feel so inclined, please join us, because I only put $250 down, and I think the total cost is a little over $1,000. Isn't that right, JW?
Yes, yeah, with tax, it'll be slightly over $1,000.
Yeah. And of course, the chapter is in great shape financially. So if we're not able to get any additional sponsors, we're fine, but certainly would love to see some other companies or individuals chip in as well. So glad to do that. By the way, JW, I just learned that Becky Melton also passed her SHRM CP exam.
Awesome.
And that means we're 4 for 4 of those in this last semester that took the course, the prep course. So I guess that's Jana, Becky, Jenny, Clem, and then who's the fourth?
Todd.
Who's that? Well, Todd was actually the previous semester.
Right.
Got one more. Who is it?
I think it was
Leslie McBride.
Leslie, absolutely. So, congratulations! I'm so happy and proud of you and all the other 3 who took the test and passed. So, congratulations!
All right. Well, thank you, Steve, and be on the lookout for an email in the coming weeks too, because once I purchase the meeting owl, I plan to send an email out letting everybody know about Steve's donation and give him a little bit more publicity for helping us make that purchase. So be on the lookout for that in the coming weeks as well. I'd like to introduce now Kevin Cartwright, and he is a senior compensation analyst with Intelligent Compensation. He is here today to talk to us about the benefits of adopting a market-based pay structure. And I'll turn it over to Kevin and let you have the floor. Kevin, I may just need about 5 minutes at the very end if we end up getting 18 people to conduct that vote. But other than that, the floor is yours. And if I have any questions come through on the chat, I'll make sure to make you aware of those. So I'll monitor the chat for you. Okay, Kevin?
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see. All right, can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
All right, good. All right, thanks, James, for the introduction. As you mentioned, my name is Kevin Cartwright. I'm a senior compensation analyst with a consulting firm, HR consulting firm out of Austin called Intelligent Compensation. We handle all HR related things, but I specialize in compensation, and our firm actually specializes in compensation altogether. But for those of you who do know Bob Cartwright, I'll be ashamed if I don't mention that we do handle all of the HR related things as well. So today I move my hands a lot. They'll tell you after this, year and a half of doing virtual presentations that, you get used to it, but I would be lying. You still move your hands a lot. You still get used to, moving and talking in person. So if I move my hands a lot and you get tired of seeing the screen or little square up top with me in it moving around, just let me know and I'll go ahead and shut my camera off. All right. So as James mentioned, I'm here to talk about the benefits of adopting a market-based pay structure. And this presentation is going to focus around attracting and retaining talent. So let me go ahead. So let's move this over here. All right, so attracting and retaining talent is one of the key things that an HR professional has to handle within their organization, whether that's turnover rates or trying to keep employees that are on board with your organization who are looking elsewhere to try and find a different place to go, whether that's for their compensation or they just don't feel comfortable within the organization as a whole. So one of the main things as an HR professional within your organization is to try and not only attract key talent to your organization, but keep them there. So retaining talent and reducing turnover rates within your organization. There's many different factors that go into attracting and retaining talent, but two of the bigger ones is that that cause people to kind of jump into their organizations are compensation and career growth. I'll try not to read the screen. I'm trying to look at the thing. So, but as you know, when you're doing a presentation online, it's like right in front of you, and we're all human. So if you catch me reading, I apologize. But the idea behind this presentation is simply to show one of the ways that you can run your organization's pay structure by relying on the market, so that you become competitive with other organizations around you, people you might get talent from, or who are also trying to get talent from that talent field. So if in order to get job retention, it translates into profits. So when you lose an employee, you have to pay to train a new employee. And that process can, if it cycles, can turn into a loss of profit for your organization. That makes it important for when you are attracting talent, that you're attracting talent that's going to want to stay within your organization. The best thing you can do for your employees is to provide them with job satisfaction. And one of those things, as we all know, is compensation. And that's what we're going to focus on today, is in a market-based pay structure, is the compensation aspect of job satisfaction for your employees. Because as we know, when an employee is happy, it's less complaining. And when less complaining happens, they're more likely to stay within your organization as a whole. And like the slide says, then everybody wins, because the organization is not paying to train new talent, or they're not paying to go locate more talent. And the employee themselves are within an organization where they're comfortable in, and they feel like they're being treated fairly with value. Some of the key aspects of attracting and retaining talent are things like fair pay, having control over their own destiny, understanding and relating to the culture of the organization as a whole. And that includes understanding what the culture actually is. Instead of just going into an organization and simply doing the work and leaving, clocking out at 5 and leaving, when employees actually understand the culture of an organization, they're more likely to buy in. And that includes when, they get rewarded for their contribution to the company, and then it creates less disruptions. So when an employee is satisfied with their compensation, which is what we're going to focus on today, there's going to be less disruptions when they're talking about, like you hear murmurs within the organization, like, man, I don't feel like I'm contributing way more to this organization than what they're actually rewarding you with. And it also goes for leaders, right? So when you have management that doesn't understand the culture of an organization, it suffers, because when an employee says, hey, I'd really like to understand why I'm getting paid this for the work I'm doing within the organization. If the management doesn't understand what the culture is, or why they're being paid that much, or the structure itself that is going into the pay structure for an employee, then they realize that it just it's like a trickle down effect. If a management is confused, then the employees are confused. If the employee is confused, it causes disruptions. It causes problems within the organization as a whole. So total rewards. Total rewards is the direct and indirect pay strategies that organizations use to attract, recognize, and retain employees. And there's two main parts of total rewards. It's direct pay, which is like your pay systems, like your base pay, your incentives, stuff like that. Stuff that pushes an employee and rewards them for their contribution to the organization. Then you have indirect pay, which comes with benefits. And like I mentioned before, we're focusing on direct pay today, mainly base pay. Compensating employees. When an organization's total compensation system is tied to an organization's mission, strategy, workforce, and its need to maintain external and internal equity, then there's a driving force that employees can fall back on in fully understanding the culture of an organization. So organizations should strive to develop and maintain a pay system that helps attract, motivate, and retain employees. Oftentimes especially as a consultant, we go into clients, and they'll just have randomized structures going into how they're paying their employees. And we'll go in and we'll ask them, like, what is your purpose here? Like, what is the purpose of your pay structure? Why are you doing it this way? Because, sometimes they have a reason, and sometimes they'll just say, well, we're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants, and we're trying to pay as employees come in. And when you're compensating employees, it's important to have a structure in place. And the structure that we're going to talk about today is a market-based pay structure. Now, if you're not sold on the whole culture idea, there's different things that have gone into recently, not recently, but within the past that HR should be familiar with, such as the Equal Pay Act, which is equal pay for equal work. Or age discrimination happens all the time, where an older employee is getting paid less than a younger employee, but they're doing the same work and stuff like that. When you don't have a structure in place for an organization, then you start to see disparities happen, and you can't catch them because there's no structure to catch them in. When you have a blind structure going into an organization, then things like the Equal Pay Act and age discrimination start to reoccur because the organization itself, HR, management, they're unable to actually locate where those problems are happening. So when you have a structure in place, you are able to catch these things. So market-based pay structure. What that really is relying on the market to determine how much you are going to pay or how much an organization will pay their employees. And why that's important is because when an employee is looking elsewhere for work, they might look at compensation and they'll say, hey, well, that person over there within the same industry is going to be paying me a lot more than what I'm earning here. But if you have a market-based pay structure, you will be able to compare the rates that you're paying or that an organization is paying their employees to the rates that someone else or another organization is paying their employees. You'll be able to compare them. You'll be able to make adjustments based on whether you want to get high talent, medium talent, or lower end talent. Market-based simply means organizations need to attract as well as maintain key employees by using the market to use salary increases that can help organizations be competitive and attracting new talent. It's just a big fancy paragraph that just means relying on the market to establish your pay ranges, your pay rates for an organization. When an organization relies on the market, they are putting all the market where they would pull talent from or where talent might be looking elsewhere towards and saying, how is my organization paying compared to other organizations that are looking for similar talent? How to execute a market-based pay structure. So within this presentation, we're going to talk about various elements of a market-based pay structure. I would bore you to death if I went and I did every single part of a market-based pay structure. But I'm going to highlight a few parts of it and elements of it so that I can highlight why it's important in attracting and retaining talent. Those things are understanding the organization, the collection of internal data, the conducting of a market analysis, a comparative analysis, the development of a pay structure, implementing and evaluating a pay structure that is put in place, and then career development. Now, career development is not necessarily an element of a market-based pay structure, but when we talk about later is that when an employee goes into an organization and starts working for them, they're more likely to stay when they can identify how they can grow within an organization. So let's start with understanding the organization. That includes the culture of the organization, the workforce, support from upper management, external and internal equity, and compensation philosophy and strategy. First of all, is an organization has to understand their culture before they can set up a market-based pay structure. That pretty much summarized, it just means, is this an organization that, where you walk to the organization and the organization wants you to be part of the family? You're working here, you're going to get these benefits regardless of the contribution you have to the organization. Or is it a contribution-oriented organization where it's performance-driven? You're not getting anything until you prove to the company or the organization your worth to the company, and this is why the company should be paying you. Either one is fine, but it's important that an organization understands which one that they fall under when developing a market-based pay structure, because you can't develop whether you're going to be competitive with the market or if you're going to be behind the market and get talent that isn't looking for a higher range of pay. They're simply looking to be part of the family. Either one is fine, but it's important to know what kind of culture an organization is having before they can start developing a pay structure. Understanding the organization in terms of the workforce. Organizations can't just simply say, we're going to do this and set up a pay structure. You have to understand what workforce you have. because an organization with entry-level workers is going to have a very different compensation structure than organizations with experienced workers. If you're lower level, you don't have to be as competitive with the market because you're simply getting lower level workers that'll come in and do the job that you're asking them to do, and they should be happy within the organization based on the pay. So you're still competitive, but you don't have to be highly competitive. But if you have experienced workers, you're going to want to pay them competitively to the market, or else they're going to go looking elsewhere because they're going to take their talents, their resumes, their skills that they've developed throughout their experienced work careers, and they're going to take them somewhere else who's going to pay them more. An organization should survey their employees to gauge what employees are looking for. If an organization, falls back into culture. If an organization is simply just, this is what my culture is, this is what I'm doing, but they pay no mind to the employees working within the organization, there's going to be like a downfall at some point, because an organization's culture has to fall on the workforce. What is the workforce looking for? Like we saw in the culture, are they looking for to be part of the family? I'm just looking for my benefits, looking for my pay. I'm willing to do what I need to. Or are you looking for contribution based, where I'm willing to go the extra mile, but are you willing to pay me? An organization must rely on the workforce and its culture to understand how are we going to set up this market-based pay structure. Now, I have 4 beautiful nieces that I spend so much time with. If you're familiar with kids, I guess there's a new Boss Baby movie coming out. So that's where this picture came from. But understanding the organization, it starts not only as an HR professional trying to figure it out, like what is the culture, establish this, but if you don't have the support from the top management, there's going to be a downfall somewhere. You can go and you can be, I'm a lone ranger and I'm going to be setting up this comp program for our company, for our organization. Sorry. But when you put it on the front doorstep of your management and they take one look at it and they decide that is not what they want to do, there's a problem. So when you go and you're understanding the organization, the culture, the workforce, it has to start with you, the HR professional has to understand it, and they have to be in line with the management. They have to be in sync as they're establishing what kind of culture the organization is going to be. Are they going to be competitive in the market? Are they going to lag in the market? What workforce are we going into? Survey your employees. Because when an organization does all that and they're in line with their management, when you start pushing, when an employee starts, complaining about pay disparities or something like that, you have the support of management. Because we all know a disgruntled employee is coming straight for HR. And if you don't have the support of management from the beginning, you're going to have a heck of a time trying to please the employees they come up, or get the employee to fall back in line with the organization. External equity is the comparing an organization's compensation methods to competitors in the same market who compete for the same employees. When you're looking at the external equity of an organization and you're trying to understand what your organization falls in line with, you start looking at things like the industry. What are the services? What are the products that your organization is doing? What are they giving to their employees? And what are the services that your company serves to the greater community? You also look at occupation. You're recruiting employees with the same skills and experience. So when you're looking at an external equity of an organization, you're looking at other organizations that are trying to hire the same people with the same skills and experience. If an HR professional is not sure of what those things are, it'll be very difficult to understand the talent that you're trying to attract and retain. Now, you also have to pay attention to the location, because smaller organizations might hire from local areas. So you want to look at local organizations around you. Where is that external equity coming from? But if it's a big organization who might go out of the local area, you have to pay attention to organizations not near you, but out near or around you in the general area where you might be getting your talent from. So when an organization is trying to understand their external equity, you have to focus on what organizations are trying to take the talent that I'm trying to get as well. And what are they paying and what are they doing to keep that talent around? Or what can my organization do in order to poach that talent from those organizations? Again, it all falls on the culture and of what the organization stands for. External equity, when like we have been talking about, it falls in line with, does the organization want to match the market, or does it want to lead the market or lag the market? What that means is, if you are going to start comparing your pay rates, or if an organization is going to compare their pay rates, if you're going to match the market, your pay rates are going to be similar to those of the people who are also hiring the talent you desire. If you're going to lead the market, which is more where you're trying to hire like desirable talent, more experienced professionals, then you want to say, my pay rates are going, if I'm comparing them to the market, my pay rates are going to be higher than the average competitor who's trying to obtain the same talent that the organization is trying to obtain. Now, lagging the market, many different reasons why an organization would lag the market, some including, controlling labor costs, because you would rather pay less money to your employees so that you have more money for services, or economic necessity, profits are low, or there's focus on revenue elsewhere within the organization. As in, you have a lower level employees who you're not as focused on attracting and retaining than you would if you have experienced upper level. So large organizations typically have a mixture of these three things. You'll have lower level, where you might lag the market to save money or revenue, and then you'll be matching the market or leading the market with higher level experienced professionals. All of it depends on how important talent is to the success of the organization. So you can have a mixture of these, or you can follow one in particular, but it all depends on what is the value of the talent that you're trying to obtain, to attract and retain within your organization. How much is an organization willing to pay in order to keep their talent from leaving? Internal equity goes inside the organization. So we just talked about external equity, which focused on what are competitors paying and how can I compare my rates, my organization's rates, with those of competitors. When you look at internal equity, you're talking about what are the employees within your organization feeling? Do they feel like they're being paid fairly for their compensation? Positions within an organization are fairly rewarded for the work required by the employee in them. So are the employees happy with what they're being paid? Unfortunately, you can't just focus on either external or internal. An organization can't, because an organization has to focus on both, because not only are they trying to pay in compared to the market, outside market, but the organizations also have to keep the internal equity stable, the employees that are already there, which goes into retaining employees. If they don't feel like they're being paid fairly, then they're going to split. And so all that time while you're in the external equity, trying to attract talent, showing that you pay, competitively to competitors, you're losing talent because the people you already have, or the organization already has, is the employees at the inside of the inside the organization are feeling like, they're not being rewarded. Their value to the company or the organization is not what they think it should be in terms of their pay. And if you guys have any questions, I know this is a lot of information, so please feel free to put it in the chat or just speak up. So all of this together, you have the culture, the workforce, considering the external and internal equity of an organization. An organization then forms what you would call a compensation philosophy and strategy. Now, this is just a giant thing called a plan, right? Everything comes together and forms a plan that an organization will follow moving forward when they're determining their market-based pay structure. This plan will develop, are we going to be competitive in the market? Are we going to lag? Are we going to match? Are we going to lead the market? What are we going to do? What is our culture? Are we in it, for employees to feel like safe at home within our organization? Or are we interested in the employees that are just going to come in and do the work and get paid based off their production? There's no right or wrong answer, but with the compensation philosophy and strategy, an organization has it mapped out exactly how they're going to move forward. And just like when you already talk to management, when an HR professional already talked to management, it's important to make sure that management signs off on a compensation philosophy and strategy so that when it's all written down in stone on how an organization is going to move forward with their pay rates for their employees, that it lines up with the HR and it lines up with the management so that when something comes up later on, both sides are on the same page. So a compensation philosophy and strategy should fit the organization's culture. It should be internally and externally equitable based on the employees, the workforce, and what the organization is trying to achieve. And then pay strategies compare an organization to other organizations that share its industry, occupation, or location. And pay strategies just means, are you going to lag, match, or lead? So one of the greatest things that we all know about HR is that there's these big words and they mean this really small thing. So I hope fully by the end of this presentation, I have been able to break down some of these big words in ways that are just simplified in a way you can say, oh, pay strategy. What's the pay strategy of an organization? Or what is the pay strategy of my organization? You know, we're trying to match, we're trying to be competitive, or we're trying to sit down and, you know, take the talent that comes to us. But what are we doing outside of that talent that keeps the people here? The collection of internal data is the next step or process that goes into a market-based pay structure. And that includes pretty much, it's just a big old gathering of information. You need to gather employee census. You need to conduct job analysis and job evaluations, which all in all results in creation of job families. So if you're gathering info and job evaluation, employee census, that means what are the current rates that an organization is currently paying their employees for their work? And like that way you have to collect this information so that you are able to compare it to the market later on within a market-based pay structure. So employee census typically just means what are the rates that each employee is getting for the job that they're currently working in. Job analysis. It identifies job tasks and qualifications of employees and positions within an organization. A job analysis is one of the most critical parts of creating a market-based pay structure because a job analysis truly forms and it gathers all the information that a specific position is doing. So that when you are doing a job analysis, you're gathering, you know, like the knowledge it takes to perform that position, the skills it takes, and the abilities that are needed to carry out the position. So oftentimes, if you as a consultant, we might go into work with a client and we'll say, you know, what is your job descriptions? And it'll be like one-liners. And then we're like, well, is that really what they do? And that somebody will say, well, not really, right? Well, when you do a job analysis, you are actually getting right down to the bottom of what each position does, which is super important because you don't want to be matching a position to the market later on in a market-based pay structure that just like doesn't match with the position that's actually being carried out within an organization. Because you want to match up any organization's position with the market effectively and efficiently. Meaning if you just have a one-liner for a job description because a job analysis was not conducted, then there's really no telling what the position is actually doing within the organization, what the value of that position is, and how much an organization might be willing to pay for those services. So the methods of collecting data for a job analysis are observations, conduct interviews, do open-ended questionnaires. It's information collected during a job analysis is the job content, which is like the purpose of the position, the environment that the position works in, and its place in an organization. It also includes duties and responsibilities. It's very important when you're going to do a job analysis that you get all the information because you want to be able to say later on, if an employee comes into an office or an HR office and says, I think I'm doing more, if you don't have a job analysis done with an effective job description, it's hard to say, oh, you know, like, man, well, this is what you're doing, but we can't really prove it because we don't have an effective job description. But if you've conducted a job analysis efficiently, it will result in a detailed job description. And nobody likes detailed job descriptions, but every once in a while, after you've been working in HR for a while, detailed job description is like your best friend, because an employee will come in and say, hey, I think I should be making more. And then you can sit down and you can say, hey, this is what you're doing. This is what the purpose of your job is, and this is the value to the company. And if you can't prove that within a job description because the job analysis has not been conducted, then you're sitting there, you might be sitting there stumbling saying, well, this is what you're doing. And then they might say, well, this is what I'm really doing. And only the employee that is working the position really knows what their position is. That's why you have open-ended questionnaires, or you observe them, you see what these employees are actually doing. Because this all comes down to when you're attracting and retaining talent, you want to be able to say, this is the position that we are paying a compensation rate for. If you compare it to the market, this is what this position is getting paid in another organization. But if HR professional doesn't know what that position is, it's impossible to compare it to another organization. And you may lose talent because you can no longer say, this is what the position is. This is what people are getting paid for over here. This is what you'll make if you go to a different organization. Compensable factors, they reflect how a job adds value to an organization. So when you're doing a job analysis, you start gathering all the compensable factors, basically saying, what is this job worth to the organization? What are its services go into the success of the organization as a whole? Now, job analysis are a pain in the booty sometimes, right? It takes time. It's gathering all this information. But as an HR professional, it's important to have a detailed job description of what the positions are actually doing. So overall, the purpose of a job analysis is to gather enough information to create a solid job description, because job descriptions provide an organization with evidence supporting the importance, worth of each position to the success of the organization. Job descriptions once a job description is formed in a market-based pay structure, that job description will walk its way through the entire process. So anytime you're talking about a pay rate for the position, or you're comparing it to the market, you say, this is what the job is. So job descriptions need to be detailed, because if you go and say you're comparing it to the market, you want to be able to say, this is what I'm comparing to the market, instead of, oh, this is what I think they're doing, so I'll throw that in there too, and you're not getting an accurate comparison. Job evaluation, I don't have time. All right, job evaluation establishes the value of jobs within an organization. It talks about leveling of jobs. So job evaluation, once you have the job descriptions, an HR professional will take those jobs and they will say, this is the level of which ones they go. This one is higher, means more value to an organization than this one down here. That doesn't mean any of the positions are not valuable, but it allows an organization to say, well, this one we might do more for. We might be more competitive for this one. It establishes a hierarchy of jobs, which creates job families. All right. Market analysis, we're gonna go through here. All right, so market analysis is where you are pulling data from various surveys of competitors around the area, or people that are organizations that might be looking for the same talent you're looking for, and you're pulling information of what they're paying them. And when you conduct a market analysis, you are taking all those information and you're putting them and you're summarizing them and saying, that this is the average rate of all my competitors for this position. Do I want to pay my person more than this? Do I want to match it, or do I want to lag? But a market analysis simply is taking and gathering all the outside external data from external competitors and moving them into basically a spreadsheet saying, this is what my competitors are paying for this position. And this is what, then you can compare it to what your employee is currently making and make comparisons from there. A comparative analysis is looking at the external versus the internal. So once you've conducted a market analysis, you've gathered all the external data, And comparative analysis is when you start comparing, this is what an employee is actually making compared to the market, which is an important step because you're saying, how much do I need to pay? How much do I need to bump the pay rate in order to be competitive? It's putting a side-by-side comparison of what your competitors are paying for this position to what the organization currently is. And you're able to decide, what do I need to increase in order to get those pay rates to a higher level? Or do I need to bring them down? I'm paying way too much. Competitive analysis is this exact same thing as what we just talked about, which means you're taking the data you gathered in a market analysis, you're taking the pay rates that an organization is currently paying that employee or that position, and you're saying, am I being competitive? The organization has to go back to their culture and their compensation philosophy, and they say, you know what, this certain position, I don't need to be as competitive in the market as another position. But when you do a competitive analysis, you are lining up and you're putting your ducks in a row, or an organization puts their ducks in a row and says, this is where this position lines up with the market. Am I going to lose, or am I going to attract and retain talent because I'm paying, I'm matching what the market is paying, or am I paying way less and I'm going to start losing employees in those positions? So competitive analysis just lets the organization line up what the pay rates are in the market and within internally, and saying, what do we need to do, or do we need to do anything? Comparative analysis also allows an organization to determine how much it would cost, which is super important, right? When, as an HR professional, you need to go up to management and say, this is how much it would cost to increase the competitiveness of this position to the market. This is how much it would cost internally out of the revenue of the organization to be more competitive with this position. Or you might flip-flop it and say, well, we can pull back a little bit on the pay rate of this position and save more money to be more competitive with a different position. But it's important when you're going and talking to management to be able to show numbers. Management loves numbers. Management loves bottom line. This is what it's going to take. What are we going to do? And check mark. So by doing a comparative analysis, you are able to compare pay rates of the market and internal pay rates. And you're also able to see what the cost would be to implement being more competitive within the market. Pay structure involves pay grades and pay ranges. Pay grades are they group jobs that have the same internal and external worth. So pay grades simply say, here's a group of jobs, and they get paid around the same kind of area, and they're doing the same kind of work, and this is what they are. Now, the number of pay grades is based on many factors, including the size of the organization and the distance between the lowest and the highest level jobs. So if you have if an organization has really low level jobs, but they also have really high level jobs, you're going to have more pay grades, because there's a bunch of jobs in the middle where they're slotted into pay grades, saying this is a pay grade, pay grade 18. And then what we're about to talk about next is pay grades they consist of pay ranges. And at the end, I'm happy to share my slide. I know I'm going a little fast here. Pay grades or pay ranges. So they set the upper and lower bounds of possible compensation for individuals, right? So you have a position within a pay grade. The pay grades have pay ranges. So we'll say the bottom level of the pay range is $18 and the top level is $20, right? And in the middle of there is $19. So typically an organization wants to, if they want to be competitive, they'll be above the midpoint line, which will be $19. So when you're setting up pay ranges, it allows managers to go in and say, well, this person is exceeding the services that is required within this position, but they're not doing enough to be like promoted to a level 2. They're still a level 1. But pay grades allow an organization to bump the pay of certain employees' pay rates based on production. So you'll have a level one food truck or something. I try not to get too general. A level 1 food truck, and they're, you know, they're doing the basic, they'll get paid $18. That's the minimum of that pay range. But then we got somebody else who's really selling some food, you know, so they'll be in the 1950 range, but they're still the same job, same position, but pay range allow organizations to reward people within the same positions who are exceeding the production asked of them. So implementing and evaluating, which is super important because managers have to be trained. Sometimes it's HR training managers saying, this is what our pay structure is, right? So when managers say, well, I want to give this person a raise, if they don't understand the pay range structure or the pay grade structure, part of the market-based pay structure, then they're not able to go in and say, well, I'm going to give that food truck person $19.50 because the other person is making $18. Now, where does this come into attracting and retaining employees? It comes in because certain positions are able to see what they have to do, you know, that what they have to do to get pay raises, right? They're not going to they don't have the skills necessary to become a level 2 food truck driver, but they see that someone else who's a level 1 food truck driver is putting in more work, right? Employees can ask their HR professional, say, you know, what is the pay range? What do I need to do to improve my pay rate within that pay range? And they might look at somebody else who's getting paid more if there's pay transparency and say, all right, well, I'm going to start doing that. And then what pay ranges do is they allow an organization to start paying for equal pay for equal work, right? If this person's production is the same as the other person's production, then that person should be making $19.50. But you can pinpoint exactly what they should be making because the range itself establishes what they should be getting paid. But if they start exceeding a level 1 food truck and they start doing the skills and experience necessary to become level 2, then you know exactly, an organization knows exactly what level 2 should be paid because pay ranges are already set up. Instead of just throwing some cash at them saying, you know what, here you go, here you go, here you go. Instead, you have a system set up saying, this is what you will be getting paid, and here's where you can grow within that pay range and improve your status. Feedback, always ask the employees, are they understanding the pay structure of a market-based pay structure? Because when an employee understands the market-based pay structure, they're more likely to stay within an organization because when they start to understand how they can improve within the organization. But if they go in blindly and they're just given pay rates and they're like, oh, here's another promotion, but it's a randomized promotion and that they're not sure how it works, then they have no idea how they can progress within the company organization. An open door policy should always be allowed when it comes to communication, implementing and evaluating a market-based pay structure, because an open door policy allows any employee to go into HR and say, what is my pay range? What is the range of the position I'm working right now? What do I need to do to get to the next job or pay grade, which has a different pay range? Things to avoid: having a pay structure that doesn't follow the compensation philosophy or strategy. Having a market-based pay structure in terms of the competitiveness of each position that doesn't follow the culture of an organization, because then things start to crack. Because this person is not getting paid how they should be getting paid based on the culture. If employees ask questions. And restrictions on management. Management, as in managers, need flexibility to give raises, to give promotions. When you have pay grades and pay ranges, the flexibility for that is there. And then when managers understand what they're doing, they're able to go in and they're able to say, you know what, this is what I have to work with. This is the pay range I have to work with. Let's see what we can do to boost the pay rate of this person who's still working in this job under this pay grade. Career development, like we talked about earlier, a happy employee is someone who knows how they can improve their status within an organization. Employees are going to be more likely to be driven and stay within an organization when they can say, this is what it takes to improve my status within an organization. If they're blind and they have no idea, they're going to jump to another organization that provides that. Because most employees are driven. How can I improve my status? So when an organization lays it out, says this is how you can get from this pay range to this pay range, employees are more likely to be driven to improve their status within an organization. So how does fair pay come in attracting and retaining talent within a market-based pay structure? Employees are able to see that people who are getting the same, within the same pay rate that are doing their job, that there's a set limit on what they're getting, that they can get paid. There's no inflation of pay rates where you just start throwing cash at a person working the same job endlessly. Eventually they have to move up to the next pay grade. Recognition. When you have pay grades, an employee is able to move up within that pay range, from 18 to 20, they're able to get to 1950. The organization is able to provide recognition for the employee that makes them feel good about working for that organization. You eliminate disruptions because employees are able to navigate exactly why they're getting paid something, because their job description says this is what they're doing, and compared to the market, this is what they could be doing somewhere else. And there's no more talk within an organization saying, I could be getting paid more for this position within a competitor across the street. Because the employees know exactly what they're doing based on the job analysis, and exactly what they're getting paid based off the culture of the organization. Are they being competitive or are they not? Yeah, okay. That is my presentation. I had to skip through a few things. I apologize, but I wanted to get the basics of a market-based pay structure and why it's important to an organization.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. We appreciate that, man. I know there's a lot to unpack when you're talking about compensation, and hopefully if anyone, has additional questions or things they want to learn more about, they feel comfortable enough to reach out to Kevin, and if you need his contact information, I'll be glad to provide it. You just email me and ask me for it. I'll be glad to let you know how to get in touch with Kevin, because there's definitely a lot to discuss there, and it's all dependent upon your industry and your organization, and so I'm sure he would be glad to talk to you more about it.
Yes.
Are there any questions or comments for Kevin before we end our meeting today? All right.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. Sorry for the overload of information, but I hope you learned something, and I hope that I was able to speak on how market-based pay structure can be valuable to an organization when it's run correctly. Sure.
Yeah, you absolutely did a great job, Kevin. And we appreciate you for joining us today and sharing your information with us. We were also going to try to vote on our bylaws if we had a quorum, but we once again don't have that quorum. We're 6 people shy. We'll continue to try to get a meeting together where we can get a quorum and get that voted on. But until that time, we'll just have to keep sticking with our current bylaws, and hopefully we can get that situated and get that scheduled so we can vote on it. Any other thoughts or comments before we leave today? Yes, Teresa?
I was just saying thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for joining us. This meeting will be recorded and sent out so you can go back and rewatch it. And it'll end up being on our YouTube page. The link will be in the email. We'll also send out a survey for you to fill out regarding this meeting. So please provide your feedback. It always helps us look at things and see kind of what we're doing good, what we can improve upon, what we need to focus on to meet the needs of our members. And I appreciate all of you that were able to join us today, and we'll see you next month, August. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.